I've been arguing with God for a long time about sharing my story because I don't like speaking in front of people unless it's a bunch of kids. Okay. I'm way out of my comfort zone right now, so please bear with me. I really don't like talking in front of people. Okay. And also, the theme for tonight was the calm before Christmas. And I really don't feel like my story's real calm, but I'm sharing it. I'm going to share my story of struggling as a wife. When I was growing up, all I ever wanted to do was get married and have kids. And I thought I had it all figured out. Braun and I have been married for 19 and a half years. But we will both tell you that the only way we're still married is a miracle from God. And that we are closer and more happily married now than ever before. I'm going to share a part of our marriage story with you tonight that totally changed our lives, our marriage, and our walk with God. I'm not going to share all of it because it's, first of all, really long, and I don't think this is the right time. Although we have developed a passion for marriage, and we hope to help other couples through our story of restoration and God's love. As women, we have lots of responsibilities, and sometimes it can be very overwhelming. So I'm going to focus on how I had to change as a wife and a mother in order to save my marriage and to be the wife that God wanted me to be. Throughout our marriage, Braun would mention things that he would like to see change in our marriage, and I never really got it. I thought our marriage was great, and I was a wonderful wife. And from the outside looking in, others would tell me that I was a great mom and a great wife too. Well, in September of 2013, I got a very loud wake-up call. Braun told me that he wasn't happy in our marriage and hadn't been for a very long time. This was a very big shock because I had no clue, even though Braun had tried to tell me some things throughout our marriage that he would like to see change. One day when the kids were at school and Braun was at work, I fell to my knees in our living room and I cried out to God. You see, I was a Christian, but I had just been going through the motions for a very long time. I didn't have a real everyday walking relationship with God. I cried out to God for him to forgive me for not following him for the past several years. And I rededicated my life to him and made the commitment to follow him for real on a daily basis. I knew he was the missing piece in me and my marriage. That day was the beginning of my transformation as a child of God and a better wife. God saved me that day, and my heart and life was totally changed. Has totally changed since that day. I later found out that Braun was not in love with me at all anymore, and he was done. This took over my life for the next year. I've never cried and prayed so much in my life. I struggled through every single day. The only way I made it through the day was with God loving me and guiding me. I was determined to learn how to follow God every day and to be the kind of wife that God called me to be. I sought out resources to help learn where I was failing as a wife and how I needed to change. I started the Love Dare from the movie Fireproof. From that, I learned how to actively love my husband and love him unconditionally like God loves us. It taught me to do things for my husband, no matter how he was treating me, and not to expect anything in return. It also taught me to be a humble, quiet, and gentle wife. 1 Peter 3:1-4 says, Likewise, wives, be subject to your own husbands, so that even if some do not obey the word, they may be won, but without a word, by the conduct of their wives. when they see your respectful and pure conduct. Do not let your adorning be external, the braiding of hair and the putting on of gold jewelry, or the clothing you wear. But let your adorning be the hidden person of the heart, with the imperishable beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which in God's sight is very precious. I started doing many things to serve Bron and show my love for him. I would wake up before his alarm went off at 4:30 and give him a back rub. Then I would cook him breakfast, pack his lunch, get his coffee ready, and start his pickup. I would always hug him and tell him that I loved him when he left for work, even though he wouldn't say it back to me. That's very hard to do. I would always make sure I looked my best. He always griped about me wearing mommy clothes at home. I stopped wearing mommy clothes and made sure I put makeup on and did my hair. I also made sure the house always looked warm and inviting for him to come home to. I was not an affectionate person. My family was not affectionate growing up, so I didn't realize how important that was for Bron. I had to learn how to be affectionate and keep being affectionate even though I wasn't getting anything from him back in return. We also had some Jimmy Evans videos that were passed down to us from Bron's grandpa. If you don't know, Jimmy Evans is a very godly man that has had a marriage ministry for 25 years and has saved many, many marriages and families, teaching them how to do it God's way. I watched those by myself and learned that there was a lot I didn't know about marriage, even though I've been married for 16 years. I learned that there were 4 kinds of destructive wives, and I was 2 of them. I was the dominant wife. I was very independent and opinionated. I wanted to be in control because I wanted everything to be perfect, and I was afraid of failure. And of course, I knew the best way to do everything. Ha ha. I was also the distracted wife. I was distracted by all the duties as a wife, a mom, and a full-time teacher. I wanted to be the best of all of them. I would spend many extra hours in my classroom at school. I would bring work home, and I would work on it while Bron was watching TV or after he went to bed. He didn't like this at all because he wanted me to spend time with him and have my undivided attention. I cooked, did the dishes, laundry, cleaned, paid the bills, bought groceries and gifts, and did everything it took to take care of 3 kids. I couldn't let my kids cry themselves to sleep, so I would lay with them in their bed until they fell asleep. I would end up falling asleep and going to our bed in the middle of the night. Bron hated this. He wanted me to go to bed with him when he went to bed. Through Jimmy, I learned that God should be my first priority, my husband second, my children third, and my job fourth. I was putting my kids and job first, so I had to adjust my priorities. I have learned to put Bron's needs in front of the kids, and he has learned that I need help at times. Our children still get plenty of my time, but they know the importance of mom and dad having their alone time also. Jimmy also talks about meeting your husband's needs. He says honor is a man's greatest need. Ephesians 5:22 says, submit to your husbands as to the Lord. The standard of a wife's behavior in marriage is to treat her husband as she would treat Jesus. That part is from Jimmy. That really hit me hard because I could be pretty rude to Bron through my tone of speech or my facial expressions without even really meaning to. I would get really worked up about the smallest things. I learned that I needed to just keep my mouth shut sometimes. I learned to control how I said things and my expressions. I learned to honor Bron even when he failed, and that I needed to encourage him and tell him how proud I am of him and how thankful I am for everything he does. I'm not going to talk about the other 3 needs that Jimmy says a man has right now, but I was not meeting those needs either. But I do want to say that Bron needed my undivided attention at times, and that was hard for me because I had so many other things to do. He would flirt with me at times, and I would pretty much ignore him because I was focused on getting something done, whether it was cooking, paperwork, or whatever. And I took the flirting as he wanted to go to the bedroom. And I sure didn't have time or energy for that. Through Jimmy Evans' resources, I learned so much about how to have the kind of marriage that God called us to have, and how to change myself in order for that to happen. But just because I was learning all these things and changing the way I treated Braun didn't mean that our marriage got better. It actually got worse. Braun thought I was just doing all these things to get him to stay. Then I would go back to my normal self. He would tell me that he dreaded coming home to me every day. He didn't love me anymore, and that he just wanted to move on. By January of 2014, he was so angry and frustrated that he wouldn't even hardly talk to me. My heart ached so bad because it was so broken, but I never gave up. I never stopped loving Braun, and I knew God wanted me to keep fighting for my marriage. All I wanted to do was glorify God through everything that I said and did. I wanted to please God and obey Him. I didn't want my kids growing up in a broken home. But in March of 2014, Braun rented an apartment on the north side of Amarillo. The day he left to go get it all ready, I sat in my bed and prayed for hours. I'd been going through the stormy, I'm going to mispronounce her last name, Martian's book, The Power of a Praying Wife, already. So I got that book and I prayed many prayers over Braun. I also had many other people praying. And the power of prayer is very amazing. Braun came back that night and said he couldn't do it. He said when he got to the apartment, he just sat on the floor and bawled. He was so confused. His flesh wanted to leave so bad, but he knew something wasn't right. He also wanted to do what God wanted, and he was searching for that. We would have very long talks on the weekends. We would spend time together as a family, and Braun would always go to church with us on Sundays. By the end of the weekend, things would be better. But by the time he got home from work on Monday, things were back to square one. I can relate to the War Room movie a lot. I bawled through the whole movie. I spent so much time praying. I taught our kids to pray for our family, for Braun, and for Satan to stay out of our family. We had so many family and friends praying for us also. And I'm so thankful for all of our family and friends that prayed for us, checked on us, encouraged us, and guided us. I talked with Jeff, our pastor, a few times through it, and he reminded me every time that there was nothing I could do to change Braun's mind. The only one that could change Braun's mind and heart was God. For it to last, I had to let God do it. He told me to keep showing Braun how much I loved him and be the kind of wife that God called me to be. In our last Bible study, we talked about God needing our 100%. Sometimes through things we go through, and God needed my 100% in order to get me through this. I had faith in God that he was going to take care of me no matter what, because I knew that Braun had a free will, and there was no guarantee that he was going to stay with me. God continued to soften Braun's heart, and in May of 2014, Braun took a promotion and transferred from the Boys Ranch office to the Canadian office. This was totally a God thing. Braun had to get out of the Boys Ranch office, and we needed to move away from everyone in order for our marriage to be saved and healed. We bought a beautiful 2-story house in Miami, Texas, and this was going to be a new beginning. The day we moved in July of 2014 was actually our 17th wedding anniversary. Not long after we moved, I found out Braun was still debating whether to leave me. At the end of August, God told me, through another person, to do the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. As I was driving home from a dentist appointment in Amarillo one day and bawling, because I knew what I had to do and I was scared to death, I called Braun and told him that I would do anything for him. And if he wanted the kids and I to move back to Canyon, that we would. That went against everything that I believed. But I knew that's what God was leading me to do. That was the breaking point. Braun told me the next day that he wanted to stay with me for good and work things out. My heart was jumping for joy and praising God. I knew that he was staying for real this time. He never turned back, and his heart and mind has been transformed also. There was a lot of healing that had to take place for both of us. We had to learn to trust each other again. At that point, Braun's heart was still not in love with me, but he trusted God to change it and was dedicated to doing whatever it took to fall in love with me again and be the husband that God called him to be. He would get up every morning at 4:30 to have his quiet time with God before everyone got up. There was a lot that we had to work through, but we were determined to glorify God, trust him, and obey him, because that is all that mattered. We are so grateful to God for never giving up on us and for saving our marriage. And I am so thankful for Braun every day. We have 3 kids that don't have to spend the rest of their lives going back and forth to Mom and Dad's house. And our home is filled with lots of laughter and love now. For Valentine's in February 2015, I talked Braun into going to the first Jimmy Evans marriage conference. He was not excited about going, but he went for me and our marriage. He liked it so much that we had tickets for the next year already bought by the time the weekend was over, and took 2 other couples in 2016. We're going again in February, and we're taking another couple. The couples we took in 2016 are taking other couples also. So we've grown from 1 couple, which was us in 2015, to 7 couples in 2017. Braun left his job with Apache in May of 2015, and we moved back to Canyon and started up our own business. We now get to spend all day, every day together, and we love it. It was a long and hard journey that took over our lives for 2 years, but God's timing is perfect, and it was well worth it. We have a passion for marriage, and we hope to use our experience to help others. You really can have the marriage of your dreams if you put God in the middle of your marriage and do it His way. No matter what struggles you have, God can help you through them if you have faith in Him, listen to Him, and obey Him. Isaiah 41:10 says, "Don't be afraid, for I am with you. Don't be discouraged, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will hold you up with my victorious right hand." He really will lift you up, give you strength, and help you be more than you can be. I not only talk to God through prayer, but I also spent a lot of time singing to Him, whether I was crying out to Him for help or praising Him for the small and big things that He was doing.